Joining us right now is the former Alaska governor and current Fox News contributor who has been called the Mama Grizzly and the Thriller from Wasilla. But for many in the Tea Party movement, she may simply be called the leader. Welcome, Governor Sarah Palin, back to Freedom Watch.
Hey, thank you so much, Judge. And let me say, if we could just harness the energy that comes from your intro and your commentary, our nation would be that much closer to energy independence.
You're very kind. Thank you, Governor. Governor, last week the United States Senate sent to the president's desk and he signed into law a $26 billion stimulus program, which basically gives money to the states to bail them out. Does the federal government belong in the business of bailing out states that can't balance their budgets?
First question you got to ask is, we're bailing these states out with what? With more foreign dollars, with money printed out of thin air, with monetizing our own debt, perhaps? We don't have the money to bail out states, especially irresponsible, big spending legislatures across this nation. No, these states don't need a bailout. They need a boot up the backside, and their voters need to send them a message that accepting federal dollars at a time like this, when their own state governments are overspending and out of control, they need to realize these are debt-ridden, unsustainable, and fat strings attached funds that are just going to put off the inevitable in their states. And the inevitable is tough budget decisions, and prioritization has got to take place.
You know, Governor, it's even worse than sending money to the states because, as you know, as a former governor, when the feds send you money, they tell you how to spend it. So, for example, in my home state, where we have this terrific Governor Chris Christie, who did a terrific job of getting down the demands of the teachers' unions, all that he saved is now going to be compensated for by the federal government, which is going to send money to Trenton and to Juneau and to Sacramento and to Albany and tell them how to spend it. So not only do the feds reward the bad stewardship of state legislatures and governors, but they have strings attached to that cash. Question: who knows better how to spend money in Alaska or New Jersey or California, the locals or the feds?
The local government obviously is the most responsive and responsible level of government. And Governor Christie, he is doing the right thing. Let me tell you what I did as governor of Alaska. I did not want to accept all those stimulus funds because to me they were bribes coming from the federal government with fat strings attached. Accepting even some of them and veto even just a sliver of that package, my veto was overridden by a Republican-led legislature because they just, I believe, in some kind of free-for-all, this fairy tale that somehow, some way it's all going to work out and nobody has to be accountable at the end of the day to wherever these funds come from. But again, Americans have to ask themselves, we are so in debt right now. What are we thinking when we accept our congressman's actions to dig us even further into debt to bail out irresponsible states? State of Alaska, we forward-funded education, putting money aside for a rainy day. We did not need all of those funds, and yet there is greed in state legislatures, despite what maybe a conservative Republican or a conservative independent governor would like to do.
What happens to Republicans like your former colleagues, I guess they're still your friends, in the legislature in Alaska? One would think they would have backed up your courageous line in the sand, saying to the feds, leave us alone, we can manage our own state. But by overriding your veto, they became big government Republicans who are virtually indistinguishable from big government Democrats when it comes to federal money.
You're making a great point, and of course there is that faction of those independents and conservatives in a legislature who did back up their conservative governors and support them, but the majority had overridden the veto. And that was across the nation too. Other conservative and Republican governors faced the same thing that I did. In fact, litigation was threatened from legislators telling their governors that we'll go around you and we'll make sure that in those Obama stimulus packages there is that open door for lawmakers to accept the money anyway, despite what the state CEO would want to do.
Do these stimulus packages ever work? I mean, take New Jersey, for example. If these teachers get this extra money, it's just for a year. I mean, it's not going to enhance the economy. What's going to happen in another year? They're not going to raise taxes in New Jersey. They don't want a handout from the federal government. Is the government going to just bail out the states year after year? Well, what will it take for us to recognize that the stimulus packages don't move the economy forward?
precedent was already set. This is the third year in a row that the feds are thinking that they're going to bail out these states and some of these educational programs. They're unsustainable, the dollars that are coming down. And that was my reasoning for vetoing some of those funds, saying these programs that are created via, again, what I consider bribes from the federal government, they're unsustainable. And then you can't really manage the public's expectation. Too often the public thinks that somehow, some way, the programs will continue. The only way to do that is to grow more government. What this is doing too, Judge, is making more states become reliant on big brother federal government, which I believe is the ultimate wish and goal of many in Congress.
Were you surprised when the big brother, big federal government bribes, stimulus packages with strings attached started in the Bush administration? I mean, we had two stimulus packages that were worth about $500 billion together. Then we had the $700 billion TARP that your running mate, Senator McCain, ran for. Did that upset you at all, that Republicans did that?
Well, you have to remember, though, that the Bush stimulus package had a couple of components, and a big component was the tax cuts that were introduced in 2001 and 2003, whereas Obama's stimulus package, which is going to do a tremendous amount more harm to our economy, to our world, than what Bush's stimulus packages did. Obama's stimulus package is focusing on government growth, overreach, more regulation, and bigger spending.
Is there any area of human behavior that the Congress will agree it can't regulate? I mean, if the Congress decides that the sun causes skin cancer, can they make us wear hats? I mean, state it differently. Is there any restraint on Congress that you would impose if you were there or if you were in the executive branch of the government, which we never see today?
Well, first you have to look at who you are electing, and you have to see if they have any kind of track record, say on a local level of government, on a city council or borough assembly, maybe in a mayor's seat or in a governor's office, and see how did they overreach perhaps in some of the things that they had voted for or supported. And then if you're going to vote for somebody who has a track record of, even on the local level, trying to overregulate the mom and pops, the local businesses and our private property, then you can expect that you're going to get more of that in Congress. Evidently, no, those in Congress right now, too many of them, way far over there on the left, they have no restraint at all. And unfortunately, we get what we vote for. That's why it's so important on the local level, state level, obviously federal level, to know who these candidates are.
Governor, when you were on this show last time, and you were on our initial show, and I don't know if I ever thanked you for it, but I'll thank you for it now. You didn't say marijuana should be legalized, but you said the police had better things to do. You didn't say that the Patriot Act should be declared unconstitutional, but you did say that nobody should be able to hack into computers, least of all the government, without a search warrant. Is Sarah Palin a social conservative or a libertarian?
I, along with, I think, most Alaskans, have a libertarian streak in us that's quite healthy, and it helps guide our thinking and the way that we live our life up here. Quite independent. We have a pioneering spirit up here, and yeah, a lot of that has to do with a libertarian leaning. But you know, I'm proud to be registered in the Republican Party, wanting to convert many Republicans who I think are straying too far to the left, thinking they need to be politically correct and part of this idea that government is the solution. And you know, I want to help them see the light and get closer to our roots in the Republican Party. The roots are all about freedom, fighting to protect our Constitution, and again, a lot of that has to do with that philosophy that perhaps a libertarian would be embracing too.
Which might be that government is best, which governs least. You'd certainly go along with that, wouldn't you?
Absolutely, absolutely, Judge.
Governor, thanks very much for joining us. I see the fireplace behind you. Don't tell me it's time for a fireplace in Alaska in August already.
Oh, it is. It's cooling down quickly. It's probably in the 40s right now, and we'll be stoking that fire pretty soon. And yeah, it's fall time.
Governor Sarah Palin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Judge.